You're actually hearing jeers from the crowd there as O.J. Simpson enters the Santa Monica courthouse where the jury selection civil trial continues. And we're continuing our efforts too in bringing you all of the latest developments from that trial in what we are calling O.J. Fridays here on Rolonda. Today we're going to update you on O.J.'s custody battle. And later in the show we're also going to meet Dream Team lawyer Barry Schecht and former attorney to the Brown family, Gloria Allred. We're also going to talk about the jury selection process and why it has even shocked Inside Edition's chief legal correspondent, Star Jones. The court session has just ended out in Los Angeles, and Star is joining us now with the latest. Star, what's going on out there?
Well, we are trudging along throughout this jury selection process, and I'm telling you, it's going very, very slowly, Rolonda. The problem that everyone is encountering is that these are long, tedious questionnaires that everyone has to fill out. We're in what is called the publicity section of the jury selection. So what they're doing is trying to find people who basically has lived under a rock for the last couple of years and don't know very much about this case. You know they're few and far between, but I have to tell you, I've been laughing and picking my chin up off the floor because there are some people who you can tell are just being slightly disingenuous. I mean, we had one guy this week who said, I have no opinion, I never had an opinion, nobody I know has an opinion, and we all sat there and went, yeah, right.
And you know that man's not telling the truth. I understand there were lots.
We've been together for the last couple of years talking about this. You and I have not been anywhere in 2 years where someone has not asked us our opinion about the O.J. Simpson case.
That's right. I understand there's some things coming out of that courtroom that have just made your jaws drop. Like what?
Well, I guess the one that really took my breath away was there was this one woman, white female prospective juror, who was very candid in her opinion. She said she thought that O.J. Simpson was probably guilty. She says she arrived at that decision sometime prior to the verdict. It's the same opinion that she holds today, that she basically did not believe in a police cover-up or police frame-up theory, and the judge kept her. I could not believe that the judge kept her when she stated, oh, and by the way, she said, no, Mr. Baker, you and your client do not start on an equal playing field. That was enough to make my mouth go, what? When the judge said, yes, we'll keep her. So there have been a couple of situations where everyone in the courtroom has said, well, I'm telling you, I know good and well the defense is taking names and taking numbers, deciding whether or not this will be grounds for an appeal should Mr. Simpson lose this case.
Also joining us is O.J.'s good friend and supporter, civil trial lawyer Leo Terrell, and also from Los Angeles, Superior Court Judge Bert Katz. What do you guys, I understand, Leo, that you actually talked to O.J. recently. What is he saying?
I talked to O.J. Simpson today, and he's frustrated about the entire process. And he's frustrated because of the misinformation that's coming out. And without getting into too much detail, he's frustrated about how the media has portrayed his attempt to get his kids back. Rolonda, he has tried to get his kids back since the day he's been acquitted. But there's been people out there, I'm not mentioning any names, Gloria Allred, who's been giving bad information, wrong information about his attempt to get those kids. And let me make one other point. I challenge Gloria and the Times reporter and everyone to reveal their sources about how they know about Sidney and Justin. They know nothing.
Leo, do you agree with that? I mean, Bert, do you agree with that?
Well, let me tell you something. First, I want hazard pay sitting next to my good friend and radio talk show co-host Leo Terrell. So you're on the hook on that one, Rolonda. But let me tell you something. The downside of O.J. not appearing because he's frustrated shows his low level of tolerance.
That's not true.
No, let me finish, Leo.
He cannot take a lie.
Guess what's going to happen? What's going to happen on cross-examination, because they're going to call him as if on cross, when Petrocelli starts to examine him, you're going to see that he's not going to be so cool. He's going to lose his demeanor. He's going to not show
Judge
himself
Katz,
in the best light.
have you ever had a conversation with O.J. Simpson?
Let me answer that. Never. Never.
Judge, let me be the prosecutor for just 1 second, okay? I mean, I've been sitting in this courtroom being frustrated when lawyers are making what I consider to be absolutely stupid errors, but moving on past that. Have you ever had a conversation with the man?
Never.
I have never had a conversation.
I can tell you, Judge Katz.
Yes.
I've talked to all kinds of people, as you have.
Yes.
And I am going to tell you, having spoken with O.J. Simpson on several occasions, Mr. Simpson should not be counted out of this.
We're not doing that.
Do not think that he is someone who has lost that charming ability. Remember,
I'm not
this is a
saying
man
that.
who's not carried a ball in 20 years.
So, Bert, what
Yet
are
he
you
made
saying?
enough money to keep himself, shall we say, in the millionaire
You know,
status.
the point I'm trying to make is, no, I think he's articulate. He's had 2.5 years to think about the testimony, knows the facts better than anybody. But let me tell you something. Under the crucible of cross-examination, in front of the world, especially when the media is going to be putting their spin, he's going to be frustrated. That level of tolerance is going to come and impact adversely the testimony. Because, look, I was on the Manson cases.
True.
I know how to cross-examine. I know that the others know how to cross-examine.
He knows nothing about O.J. Simpson, so it's wrong for him to sit here and say that, and that's the fact. He doesn't, never spoken to the man. Just like I said again, a lot of people are sending out information about O.J.'s desire to get those kids, and they have never spoken to those kids, Rolonda, and I challenge them.
Star, Bert, Leo, take a look at this shot that we have all, many of us have just simply marveled at. You have the shot of O.J. Simpson coming into the court, and there, my goodness, I'm seeing double the dummy in the scene. What do you think about this latest picture, Leo?
Well, you know what? That picture is just an attempt by O.J. Simpson to just give some lightness to this situation. I'm going to tell you something, Rolonda. I spoke to the man today. You know what bothers him?
What?
The chance of him not being able to see his kids until this matter is resolved. This thing has been put off, this custody battle has been put off until November, and this man's been denied the opportunity to see his kids. You know what you should do? And unfortunately, the Brown family can't talk. Why don't you ask them, on the day that O.J. Simpson got out, isn't it true that he called them and wanted to see the kids? The day he got out, I wish you could get that from the Brown family and not from Gloria Allred.
And he was with Paula Barberia playing golf
that's
somewhere.
Not true.
Where was that?
You were not there. You were not there that day.
Excuse me.
We're going to sift through all of this when we come back. Barry Scheck was part of O.J.'s dream team, many of you may recall, and he really stirred things up in the courtroom. We're going to find out if he's going to stir things up even more here and what he thinks of today's proceedings as soon as we come back.
There. How about that, Mr. Fung?
Is that a question, Mr. Scheck?
Yes. How about that picture, Mr. Fung? Does that refresh your recollection that you took the envelope from Andrea Mazzola with your bare hand?
Lot going on here in the Rolonda studio today. We're here talking about O.J. Round 2. It's the civil trial in which Nicole Brown Simpson's family and Ron Goldman's family are accusing O.J. of wrongful death action in this civil case. We were just talking to Leo and Bert. I got to tell you this, that during the commercial break, the audience was talking about you and they liken you to an old married couple.
I want a divorce right now.
Who is Oscar and who is Felix? That's what I want to know.
Absolutely. And Leo, I've got to tell you, you took a pot shot there at Gloria Allred. Well, I want you to know she's coming up on this show and you can have a chance to talk to her face to face.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Joining us now is a member of the Dream Team during O.J.'s criminal trial. I'd like everybody to welcome Barry Scheck. Nice to have you, Barry. Really nice to have you. You have been following this right in the mix of it, and now we're in the civil trial. You have seen what happened today. What do you think about what's happening, how the proceedings are going, and especially the events today?
Well, it's very hard, I think, when you're not in the courtroom watching this, and we get the reports. I guess Starr is really in the best position to make an assessment. But I think anyone can see that this is going to be a very difficult thing to do, to pick a fair and impartial jury, because there's some factors that are going on in this case that are truly unique in terms of the depths of people's opinions one way or the other about this matter. And I think it's going to be very hard, if you take it seriously, to get people that will really be fair and unbiased.
What kind of jury do you think it's going to take for O.J. to be found not liable of wrongful death? What might the composition of that jury be?
I think it's difficult question to speculate on because I'm of the view that the way that the evidence went in the criminal trial, and that's really what I can speak about with more authority than anything else, that even if there had been 12 Caucasian jurors, that I don't think that there would have been a conviction, perhaps a hung jury, but not a conviction, because I don't think there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt as that case was presented to the jury.
Rolonda, if I could jump in with that.
Sure.
I have great respect for Barry Scheck. He's a superb lawyer. My feeling is that it isn't so much whether or not they're white jurors or black jurors, but we're talking about socioeconomic demographics. So we're talking about whether or not you have the education that might embrace DNA, for example, or if you don't understand it, you say just garbage in, garbage out. Or if you are looking through the lenses of your own perceptions that you've had bad encounters with the police such that you can't trust them. Those are the type of things that impact the jury, not necessarily whether they're black or white.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree that the life history that jurors bring into the jury room in terms of their attitudes towards police and the criminal justice system would be important in this case, as they are in almost any criminal case. I take some issue on the question of education level and the issue of the forensic evidence, because I believe that in terms of the contentions that we put before the jury, whether you had a PhD in biology or you didn't, really wouldn't have mattered in terms of the way the evidence was being presented.
So how is all this going to come into the civil trial?
Well, I'm really just sort of laying all this out for you. The same evidence will come out in the civil trial, I assume. I don't really think it matters whether you have your level of education. You're going to get the contentions.
And Barry, you know what? Let me go ahead and tell you what's happening.
Wait a minute, before you get there,
courtroom.
Star, let me take a quick break. I got to get a commercial in, and we'll continue with this thought right after this break. What role will Nicole's diary about alleged beatings by O.J. play in the civil trial as we talk about evidence here? Gloria Allred, former attorney for the Brown family, is going to be here in just a moment with some answers right when we come back.
I'm not sure that it will ever be over for the Browns. They've been living with a nightmare of Nicole's murder for a long time, and they're going to live with it the rest of their lives.
Tupac Shakur's murder has sparked controversy over the violent lifestyle of some rap musicians. Now, some of rap's biggest names are coming together to find out if there's a way to stop the violence. Next, Rolonda. Just before we left here, as we are continuing with what we call OJ Friday here in Rolonda, as we talk about the civil trial, we were talking about an issue before, and Star, you wanted to update us. Did something happen in the trial today?
Well, the one thing that I want everyone there to understand, sitting in the courtroom, that there are a number of jurors who you can tell just from their answers to the questionnaires are very intelligent people, are very articulate, are both black and white, and you can tell from some of their responses, it wasn't that they didn't understand the DNA, they rejected the prosecution's theory and accepted the defense theory. And so I take a little issue with Judge Katz's theory that it's all based on economic level and social level and intelligence, because it is not. I mean, if you sit in this courtroom, you can hear that jurors of both races are telling you what their interpretation of the evidence was. If there was a problem with your perception of whether or not the police did something to tamper with the evidence, and or there was contamination in the way it was collected and examined, then they rejected the prosecution's theory and accepted the defense theory.
Star, wouldn't you agree with me that if they lack a fundamental understanding to deal with the science of DNA, that they're more inclined to say garbage in and garbage out? Isn't that the easier way?
You know what? But I have to tell you, the science itself is not the easiest thing to understand, and I have to agree with Barry in saying that even if you have a PhD, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to understand it. But sitting in the courtroom, I'm only dealing with what I'm seeing in this trial. I've tried very hard to get rid of what I saw the last trial and look at what I'm seeing this time and listen to what the jurors or the prospective jurors are saying. And I can tell Barry, just so he'll know, one of the prospective jurors said that Barry Scheck was a genius attorney, and Bob Baker at one point said, I hope you all won't hold us to the Barry Scheck standard of
Barry, I
legal
gotta ask you
maneuvering.
this, having been part of that dream team that defended O.J. Simpson in the criminal trial, was there something as you look back that you learned most that you would suggest for this trial, or as you look back in hindsight? What'd you learn?
No, I don't think that you can. I think that what's really fascinating about this case, as opposed to almost any other, is that people, whether they saw the whole trial or not, and just even seeing it on excerpts, and I'm sure Sonia would have a view on this, believe that they know, one way or the other, what the evidence shows. And that they saw witnesses, and they could make judgments about the credibility of a witness.
Sonia here is shaking her head. She's been chomping at the bit to jump in there. When you talk about juries, Sonia knows. She's into it.
It's really different than any other case, because you may come into a case that had pretrial publicity of some kind or another, and you sit maybe a little askance and you say, well, that's just what the reporter wrote. But here, everybody saw the witnesses, and everybody has formed their own judgments already about the credibility of witnesses that they're going to see.
So how do you handle that, Sonia Hamlin? How do you handle it? Sonia Hamlin, let me point out, works for law firms all around the country, advising attorneys on how to pick juries and how to get those jury members that they pick to listen. You have been chomping at the bit listening to this. Go on, Sonia, just take it. What do you want to say?
See? This is lawyers talking to other lawyers about lay people. Everybody sitting out here, we're different, see, because I'm not a lawyer, or I'd be talking like them. I talk like you.
Come on, Sonia, talk, please. The ladies over here clapping. Let's hear it.
The thing that concerns me is jurors have a very particular reason for listening. They listen because this will help them make a decision or not. If you talk for 3 weeks about DNA, they've long since lost the chance to use this in their jury deliberations. So it has to be pointed. It's not whether you're intelligent or not, it's whether the lawyer presents it in such a way that I get this much and no more, thank you very much, because I got what I need. They went on forever because they're so steeped in it, and they think, if this is good, I'll give you some more. But that isn't the way they listen, and this isn't what they absorb. So the problem is not only one of education, it is one of how it's presented, and does the jury feel this is useful, they'll stay right there. And if they think it's not, they're looking at the ceiling.
It's a very tricky situation when you're questioning potential jurors, especially when you're dealing with a case this publicized. You know, how would you go about doing that? Can we play a game here just for fun? Sonia, you're fun. Let's do that.
Okay.
I'm going to pick two people. You, come on, stand up over here. And lady here in the red, come on, you're dressed for TV today. Come on, you guys. Let's pretend as if, what's your name?
Brenda.
And what's your name?
Judith.
Judith and Brenda. Come on, you guys. Let's say that these ladies
Rolonda,
are...
can I ask for one more?
Sure.
Would you just stand up too, please? The woman that's sitting right at the edge
Who?
there. The lady with the black and red.
black and red? What's your
right
name?
Uh-huh.
My name is Annie Brown.
Come on, Annie
Can
Brown,
you
you've just
stand
become
up?
a potential juror. Yay! Come on over here. Now, Sonia, why did you choose Annie?
Because I think that one of the biggest issues in choosing the jury has to do with black versus white jurors.
Okay.
Because what has come through so far is that white and Asian jurors say, we think he was guilty and got away with it, and black and Hispanic jurors say, we think he was innocent and the verdict was right. Okay. So it's split that way, and therefore I would want to speak to at least one black person.
Okay. Why don't you go and do your questioning?
Can
You
I
can
stand up and go
you
and
do
do-
whatever you want to do. I want you to feel at home. I'll just hold the mic. Ladies,
right.
be prepared. You are potential jurors, okay, in the O.J. civil trial.
Hi, tell me your name.
Brenda Bird.
Brenda, and you are?
Judith.
Judith?
I'm Annie Brown.
Annie. Let me ask each of you, and you can just answer one after the other. What is your opinion of the verdict in the original case? Do you think O.J. was guilty or innocent?
Innocent.
And what do you think?
I think he was guilty.
And you feel?
I really don't have an opinion right now.
But did you watch the case?
I watched the case.
And how did you
but,
feel when it was over? Did you smile? Did you clap?
I smiled in some way, and then I felt kind of, I don't know, undecided,
Undecided.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
exercising my peremptory right now
Quiet, Judge.
because the body.
Okay,
Wait a
hang
minute,
on.
we'll get back to
Not
you.
finished
Okay.
yet. But here you are, you said you thought he was innocent. Now here you're supposed to come into this trial pretending you've never heard any of it and hear it all again fresh. What makes you think you could hear it all fresh? Maybe he's guilty. Could you hear that?
I don't think so.
You couldn't hear it. You really feel so strongly?
Yes, I do. They would have to give me a time frame. They would have to show me that he had time to do it, and I don't feel they did that.
Okay, so the most important part for you is the time. Now how about you? You say he's guilty. How would you hear that he could possibly be
I
innocent?
have to hear good evidence.
Good evidence about what? One particular thing?
The time, as
Anything
Wendy
else?
said, and also what he did after running back and forth on the highway. It just
Okay.
seemed like it was for stars.
What about you? Could you hear it fairly?
Basically, I got kind of confused in the case, so if they can really prove that, the
Okay.
evidence and everything, the time.
Let me ask
then-
you this question. You are a member of the black community, surely have many black friends, black relatives, and so forth. If you felt, after you heard all the evidence, that O.J. was guilty, how would you be able to handle the fact that your community and your family and your friends would say, what do you mean you turned your back on him? He's a black man.
Well, I don't use race as a part of it. If you done that crime, you do the time. But I don't. That's all I can say. I don't use race as part of
So
it. If
that
he's
wouldn't be
guilty,
a
he's
problem
guilty.
to
No,
you?
it would not be a problem with
Okay.
me.
Tell me how both of you feel about the idea of giving money to either of those families because someone was killed. Well, how do you feel about that?
I'm not sure. I have very ambivalent feelings about it.
Tell me them.
If he's guilty and he's got the money, he should really support the children and give money. What concerns
Give
me
money in what
financially-
way? He would give money anyway, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but to the children to support them.
And to the
not
Goldmans to
get-
give the millions to the Goldmans. How do you feel about
No, I don't feel that's fair.
that? Okay. If I were to
Can
ask,
I just say one thing? Sure. I think also this whole trial has really put the blacks against the whites, and it's been really taken us back in history too many years, and
Yes.
it's creating
Yes.
a lot of uneasiness
Yes.
that should not be there.
We're gonna
Because
take
it's not a black and white issue. It's a man killing a woman, even if he did it or didn't.
We're going to talk about that a bit more, too. Very nice. And Gloria Allred, the attorney representing the Brown family, is going to join us next. Thank you. Very interesting. Do you ever watch the Rolonda show and say to yourself, hey, that could be me? Well, you could be right. Tell us your story. You could end up right here, a guest on my show. Call us at 1-800-4ROSHOW or send email to roshow@aol.com. Still nervous from the. I have got to tell you, during the commercial break, Sonia, a lot of us were talking. Really, we were going like, that was really cool. How you were able to ask those questions, and as we watched the body language of our potential jurors and the nervousness and how they were answering, what did you feel about that process? See, like I said, still nervous, still nervous.
Yes, I'm very nervous.
And I can imagine you watch the body language, you watch everything, the way their eyes twitch when you say certain things. What were some other questions that you would have gotten to had we had time?
Depending upon my witness list, and I want to care very much about who would believe my witnesses, I would ask them to rate certain professions on a scale of 1 to 10. Whom do you believe most? Whom do you believe least? Scientists or policemen, news reporters, if we're worried about the bias, to hear where they would automatically lean. And if they don't like my most important witness and they don't like that profession, don't believe it, we're in trouble. What was interesting about all of these witnesses was that they were really all good potentially, because nobody said absolutely not one way or the other. The woman in the middle said, well, she could think about it for the Brown children, but for the Goldmans, that's another thing. That means this is a thinking person who wants to evaluate and wants to hear more of the evidence. One other thing about them all being so nervous, this is what we know about in the courtroom. When you ask questions of potential jurors in the courtroom, picture how scared they are. Here's the judge, there's a flag, there are all sorts of people asking heavy questions. Yeah. It's terrifying, which means that you don't always get the straight answer. You get whatever comes up, or you get like, oh, I'm never going to tell you about that.
I even asked one of them, I said, were any of you trying to fudge your answers a little bit, hoping you wouldn't be put on the jury? And you said what?
Yes,
yes, he was. Oh, well, at least you were honest. At least you were honest.
Rolonda, let me tell you that is not the issue going on in Santa Monica. I get the feeling people are fudging their answers so they can get on this jury.
Oh, gosh. Well, somebody who sat through the last trial for sure and is still a champion for the Brown family, the former attorney to the Brown family, Gloria Allred. And she believes that this alleged domestic violence should certainly play a crucial role in the court case. Is that what you are looking on? I want to thank my jurors, my potential jurors. Thank you so very much. But thank you. Gloria, that seems to be something that you are really hanging your hat on, the domestic violence evidence. Is that something that you think should play, obviously, a crucial role in this civil trial?
Yes, Rolonda, I think it should. And as a matter of fact, during the criminal case, the prosecution fought long and hard to be able to introduce much domestic violence evidence. And after Judge Ito ruled in favor of them that they did not, in fact, introduce much of which they had a right to introduce. And when they did, I think it was in a very disjointed way. I think it's going to be very important in the civil case. It is important on the issue of motive, on the issue of identity. And I think especially important will be what the violence was and what the relationship was at or near or close to the time of the murders themselves. And I think that is really what is important, is the relationship. Now, obviously, I've hit.
I think you've hit a nerve with somebody who is.
I have hit a nerve with Leo because the defense team.
One at a time, please.
Yeah, and of course, I didn't have the opportunity to give my views when Leo was on. I would hope that he would extend me the courtesy of being allowed to give my views.
Leo, hold on a second. Hold on.
Let me just say, I think that it is important to know what their relationship was. The defense during the criminal case tried to minimize the domestic violence, even calling it domestic discord, and talking about how we all seem to have this in our relationships. Well, first of all, we don't all have this in our relationships. And secondly, we don't talk about, of course, every person who batters does not go on to murder his wife. But it's true, too, that of those wives who are murdered, the majority have been murdered by a husband or a lover who previously beat them.
Well,
and that is something this jury needs to understand.
Let me tell you something right now about what Gloria's saying. There's not a single piece of evidence from 1989 up until 1994 where O.J. Simpson placed his hands on Nicole Brown Simpson. Now, that's a fact. Now, she's talking about a 1989 situation. There's not a single piece of evidence, but yet she'll come on a national TV show and give the listeners and the viewers the impression that there was this violence of physical abuse from 89 to 94. That is not true.
Leo, what about the 911 call? Will we see it make its way into the civil trial? Let's talk about that when we come back. We'll continue our conversation about whether domestic violence will play a part in the civil trial. Also, when we come back, Faye Resnick, remember her? Well, she's again speaking out, blasting OJ, the friend of Nicole. Might she also take the stand this go round? Well, we're going to talk about that too when we come back. We'll be right back. You want him to take the stand?
Everything he does is for show. Everything. It's all, he's a showman. And that's all there is to it.
Now, if you're going to be in the New York area and would like free tickets to Rolonda, well, please call us at 212-650-2060. So as the trial of the century, part 2, you might say, begins to speed into motion, the question remains, will the race card be used again? As we're also talking about, will evidence of domestic violence come up in this trial? And when we speak about racism, the race issue, as I know that you had brought up, our potential juror, that's something that does concern most of us. I want to read to you a recent quote of OJ's that was printed in a Turkish newspaper. He says, "The United States is a racist country. Every black person in America is punished from the moment they are born. Unfortunately, America is a country for the white. If a black man drives a new car, the whites think there has been some kind of corruption," end quote. Well, I hear some reaction around here to that. How many people agree with that statement wholeheartedly? Let me hear clap. Let me hear how many people think that's a ridiculous statement for OJ to make.
Well, actually, Rolonda,
Again, the split.
Rolonda,
yes.
You need to know that there was some controversy over the exact quote, the way it was translated, and what O.J. Simpson actually said.
Rolonda, I'm sorry, Star, go ahead.
I mean, I spoke with the reporter who actually took the notes. I also spoke with O.J. Simpson and with his attorney, Robert Baker. And the way that story is being reported in this country is not exactly what either the reporter or Mr. Simpson or his representative
What
said.
about the reporter?
Wait a minute, Bert. Now, one at a time. Leo, hit it.
Because that's the type of misinformation. No, I spoke to OJ again, and I echo everything what Star said. He told me today that statement is out of context. Get the reporter, and I guarantee you, that statement was not made by O.J. Simpson. This is the type of misinformation.
Well, Rolonda, I specifically spoke to the reporter. So we're not even dealing with what O.J. says happened. The reporter says what's being related in terms of the translation is not correct.
That's not correct.
What about the attorney who was present?
So what?
You know what? First of all, I did not speak to the attorney who was present. I am taking the notes from the reporter.
This is not true.
And the reporter specifically said that when asked about whether or not America was a so-called racist country, which is the way the wires are reporting it in this country, O.J. Simpson specifically said, I don't want to be misquoted. I don't think all of America is racist.
Well, let me tell you that, you know what?
The reporter herself told me that, and she provided a transcript that echoed it.
Well, I'm not sure what he said, but I'll tell you this much, which is really ironic. I happened to be in Turkey when all of this went down. Can you believe it? I was in a Turkish bath watching CNN.
Rolonda, you should be telling all your business. As your official lawyer, I would tell you, don't tell all your business.
Don't tell it. But I would say this, that a lot of the Turkish people would turn to me and go, tell us about this, O.J. Tell us about America. Why is this such a phenomenon in America?
Rolonda, let me also add, it has dismayed me that we are still having these conversations and dividing this trial into black and white when we're really talking about two people who were brutally murdered and a man who is accused of causing the death. We are still dealing with this race issue, and it is permeating the jury selection.
Wait, excuse me. No, wait, excuse me. You know what, Rolonda, let me chase it right now. Let's be honest in this country. It is still taboo in this country for a black man to marry a white person. It's also taboo in this country that when a black man is accused of killing a white person, there's a harsher sentiment against that black person. And that's the fact in this case. So let's not deny that. Black on white crime is looked at differently than black on black crime.
Let me interpret this for you.
No, you don't interpret anything for me. I'll speak for myself.
What we have is a racist. You're always saying we have a racist America. And by the by, we had verdicts in Yankel Rosenbaum, a racist verdict.
Don't change
we
the
had
subject.
the Crown Heights case. We had the Meyer Kahan case. Also reverse racism. There is racism in this society, and it's endemic, and we got to address it.
And maybe this trial will give us a good starting point to talk about why we're so divided on racial lines. You will be surprised.
May I just say, yes, there's a lot of racism in this country, and we all need to address it together. But
maybe
there's racism in this country, and even though there is sometimes racism in the police department, Orenthal James Simpson was not a victim of it. And that is what is important in this case.
We've got to take a quick break. We'll be right back in a minute. Coming up, more surprising developments outside the courtroom where cameras are allowed. One camera actually catching one big revelation from O.J.'s former housemate, Kato Kaelin. I also want to get back to the domestic violence issue and also want to show you what Faye Resnick had to say blasting O.J. Simpson right after this. She's pregnant with 8 babies and wants to deliver them all, even if doctors say it's dangerous.
Are you sure you know what you're getting into? 8 babies?
Why would a mother make this choice? An exclusive interview Tuesday on Rolonda.
He's black now, supposedly. Although I would like to see him start dating a black woman, because if you're going to embrace your own culture, let's do it properly. And there's beautiful black women out there, and, you know, and that's really, that would be the ultimate step for him. And maybe people would start believing him a little bit.
That's Faye Resnick. What do you go, oh, what do you think of that statement she just made? You didn't like that?
Well, hey, can I ask everybody, what is Faye? I'm black. I'm proud of it. What is Faye Resnick? What is Faye Resnick? How dare she sit there and tell OJ that he should marry someone of a particular color? No one can tell anyone else. And I want to ask Faye Resnick, what is she?
You know, Rolonda, let me tell you something that happened in court today.
This is really not an issue of who Mr. Simpson should be dating or not. This is about the murder of 2 young people. This is about 2 children having been left without their mother while they're still little babies, practically. And this is about evidence. And we haven't even talked about the fact that it's Mr. Simpson's blood that was found at the murder scene, that it's Mr. Simpson's blood with Nicole's and Ron's that was found in his Bronco, that it's Mr. Simpson's blood that was found with Nicole's and the sock in his bedroom.
Barry shaking his head.
No,
Barry,
and the importance of that evidence, next to the fact that it's a size 12 shoe that Mr. Simpson happens to wear a size 12, that he admitted himself
where
in the
was that evidence? Where was that evidence in the criminal case?
At his home.
But wait a minute, folks. Barry Scheck will be the first one to step in and say the man was found not guilty.
That's not the end of it. That is not the end of it.
Barry, what do you say?
I'd just like to talk for a second about race, because I agree that the jury will try this case based on the evidence, and they'll hear the evidence and they'll weigh it. Part of the evidence is that there was a police officer in the middle of this case, Mark Furman, who I don't think anybody would disagree was a racist. His conduct, the conduct of the other police officers, will be judged by the jury. Now, the distinction to be made here is that there are racial issues in the case. They affect the credibility of the witnesses. The jury will decide it. What's dangerous about the discussion that everybody's had about this case since it ended is that it becomes a question of racial stereotyping. Everyone involved. It has created antagonism about race relations.
Mr. Scheck, it was the defense who made this a race case.
Hang on a minute.
Listen, let me tell you something.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Racial issues don't turn Mr. Simpson's blood into somebody else's, and don't turn somebody else's blood into Mr. Simpson. And they're not the reasons that hair consistent with his was found at the scene
what are you trying to say?
in a cap resembling one that he may have owned.
Excuse me.
Let's talk about the evidence.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, it's about murder.
No.
And I've heard this racist.
Wait a minute, let him make his point.
I think it's an insult to the jurors.
Let him make his point very quickly, because someone from the audience is having a reaction here too.
Yeah, I'm simply saying that race is in the case because of the police, because of their attitudes. You make a judgment about credibility. You make a judgment about the blood evidence. You know, that's just the way cases are tried.
And that goes along with
That is
Hang
hang on a minute. None of you is talking about the reality of what the jurors bring into the courtroom.
And
it's
that's
not
one thing.
only the testimony that is
Rolonda,
presented.
let me just add this for you today. Rolonda, let me just tell you
Wait,
what
hold on
happened
1 second,
today.
Star. Let Sonia finish her point, and I'll come right to you.
Okay, thanks. We all bring our own life experiences into any room where there is a court taking place, because we are not necessarily jurors, we're folks. And we bring in our own set of prejudices and experiences based upon what we've learned. In central Los Angeles, the black population experienced the police department very differently than a white one would. So that what they were willing to hear and what they could then extrapolate from that could be different than white people who have never had those experiences.
And they also dealt with
it
domestic
doesn't have
violence
only to
in a
do,
different way
therefore,
as well.
And we'll get back to
Cases-
domestic violence, Star. I want to hear your point, and I'm going to listen to this lady from the audience who stood so patiently. Also, let's listen to what Kato Kaelin had to say about OJ's civil case when asked what he thought the outcome might be.
Am I allowed to say? I don't know. No idea. Yeah.
Do you feel as though
Yeah, I do.
OJ's guilty?
Yeah.
Or liable?
Yeah, I think guilty.
Promotional consideration provided by...
If you're 50 or older, AARP has benefits created just for you. Join now for just $8. Call 1-800-752-6300.
Ambi, skin care that's more than skin deep.
Next time, wire with MoneyGram because it's always less than Western Union. Unless you like getting overcharged. MoneyGram, the better way to wire money.
Discover a whole new world online with America Online, the easy, fun way to explore. To get your free 15-hour trial with no obligation, call 1-800-257-3400. Give it a try.
Are you in a dead-end relationship or a relationship of convenience? Find true romance with a free Lovers Compatibility Chart and a free sample psychic reading. Call now, 1-800-990-9589.
Very quickly, Star, what was the point you were trying to make there?
I just wanted to tell you that in court, one of the jurors, who was kept on the jury, by the way, made the point that the reason there's such a racial divide in this country subsequent to the verdict of the criminal case was because, and I'm going to use his words, he said society is not ready for a man of color to basically escape from the criminal justice system when he's accused of having killed 2 white people. Yeah, and the problem is, and this is according to him, this has happened before, but the shoe was on the other foot this time. The tables have turned, and society is not ready to deal with the ramifications of a man who beat the system, I'm going to use his words, through the genius of his attorneys. This was an African-American man who said that.
Bert, do you agree with that?
Yes, I actually agree with that, but here's the problem. We're facing a lot of evidence like size 12 Bruno Mali shoes. We're talking about 170 million to 1 drop.
That's not the point.
That didn't have EDTA.
But that was not what I said.
That's not the point that she made.
That's not what I made. What the point that the juror was making, and it's one of the reasons why the judge ended up keeping him, was that he was explaining why there's been such discourse and racial divide subsequent to the verdict. And it's one of the first times I've ever heard someone say publicly what a lot of people say privately.
That's right.
The problem is that Mr. Simpson used all his resources, hired the best lawyers he could buy, he could pay for, buy, and had them use all the defenses that were available for him in order to make reasonable doubt in the prosecution.
Well, let me just say, talking about shifting your doubt, I think a lot of us were pretty surprised to hear Kato Kaelin saying that he now believes that O.J. is guilty. Barry, did that surprise you as much as it did us?
Well, I don't think so, because I believe that during the course of the trial, there was some issue where he gave an interview for a book, and he gave different statements than he did on the witness stand in the book.
So what you're saying is he's had conflicting answers all along?
He changed his position a while ago. He's basically saying the same things
that he believes
happened.
that he was guilty.
He's trying to extend his. He's trying to extend his 15 minutes of fame.
Evidence that he offered during the trial that was actually very important to the prosecution. For example, the three thumps, and not long thereafter, in fact, the limo driver saw an African American male suddenly go into the house, and then lights went on, and then Mr. Simpson
Let's
came
shift
out
our
not long
attention to
thereafter.
forward. What's going to happen next week in the trial? That's what I want to know. What's going to happen as we go into this next week of O.J. Simpson civil trial? We'll find out in a minute. On the next Rolonda, bad boy rapper Tupac Shakur's songs echoed the savage life of the streets. His murder has now sparked controversy over the violent lifestyle of some rap musicians. Now, some of rap's biggest names are coming together to confront an industry that often uses violence to sell records. Rival rappers unite to find out if there is a way to stop the violence. Only on the next Rolonda. Before we say goodbye, just some quick thoughts from each of our guests about what we might be able to expect from next week throughout this civil trial. Gloria?
Well, I think throughout this trial we may see the introduction of certain portions, if not all, of Nicole's diary, because we have a new state law in California which allows that in, and in that diary she made many entries where she records Mr. Simpson's abuse of her, whether it's physical or whether it is verbal.
That's not a diary. Those are divorce papers.
Even some allegations that she makes about what he said to her.
I'm not going to let you get on national television and say that.
Okay, Leo, then what do you think we're going to see next week?
Oh, besides the fact that Bert and Gloria are wrong, that diary is not a diary. You're not going to see that admitted because it's divorce papers. It's proceedings related to a divorce, and it's not
Leo,
admissible.
what do you think we're going to see next week?
You're going to find the same process that we saw this week, more jurors being screened for the next phase. Nothing more than increasing the jury pool.
I hate to admit it that Leo's right. That's
You're not going to see anything
Barry,
next
what about
week,
you?
actually.
What do you expect to see next week?
I'm a person on a talk show. I don't know. They're out there.
I can tell you, Rolonda, you're not
projections?
going to see anything next week because we're not going to be able to bring you anything different than what happened this week. They have at least 2 to 4 weeks of jury selection to go. I don't expect to even get testimony to sometime in mid-October, and I may even be talking about early November the way we're going.
Sonia?
And that's all true because of the kinds of questions that have to be asked to get to the kind of information we heard very quickly.
We might have to have you back because I enjoyed that little session. Maybe when there's nothing going on in the trial, you can come play with us. We'll do the mock trials here. We're certainly going to be gathering all the information throughout the week so that you can depend on us on OJ Fridays on Rolonda to get all your information and maybe stretch your mind a little bit and get a good debate going. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Rolonda. Thank you, everybody.